And we're going to lead off with the Board of Adjustment, correct?
Yep.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Thursday, March 24th, 2022 Watertown Board of Adjustment meeting. Can I get a roll call?
Yes. Dolly?
Here.
Ford?
Here.
Oletsky?
Present.
Kays?
Here.
Dargis Johnson?
Here.
And we have a quorum. Brink, Hanson, Spire, and Culhane are absent.
So we have just 5 today, correct?
Yep. Yep.
All right. So moving on to the next item on the agenda.
For the variances. Yes, and then just
Was that
for, to make it known to, Councilman Tupper is here as the liaison for the Board of Adjustment and Plan Commission.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the March 9th, 2022 meeting.
Move to approve case.
Have a
Second.
motion?
Second.
And a second.
Dargis.
Any comments or discussion on those meeting minutes? All right, we'll take a vote.
All right, Dolly.
Yes?
Ford?
Yes.
Oletsky?
Yes.
Kays?
Yes.
Dargis Johnson?
Yes.
5 yes, no, that is approved. We'll move on to the regular agenda now. Item 4. Yes,
and
Brandy?
Blake, if I could make an amendment to that, to the agenda. So if you guys on Teams are using the online agenda, I have updated
Okay.
that to reflect the changes, but I did make an amendment to item B, and that was just specifying what the request is for the front yard setback encroachment, so it's more clear for the board to act on that.
Okay, perfect. And I do see that on the online version, regular agenda as amended. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yep.
So we'll take item 4A on the agenda first, which is a conditional use for a home occupation. Brandy?
Okay, sounds good. So this is a conditional use request for a home occupation. The business will be for a yard card business. And this is at 2805 Fifth Avenue Northwest. I'll pull it up here for your bearings. This is in the Derby Downs subdivision, as you can see. And really, it'll be yard cards or...
Sorry, Brandy, do you have the ability to share your screen on the Teams?
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
So the yard cards are considered decoration, for an event, graduation or birthday party, things of that sort. So they will be stored inside the home, and then when they are, rented, then the owner will, or the people that are, the customer will come pick up the sign, put it in, or the yard card, it's not a sign, we'll put it in their yards and whatnot. So it's not going to be additional clutter or outdoor storage on the specific property. It'll be per rental basis that it'll go out to a different property. So with that, and the applicant is here if there are additional questions, but I will turn it over to the board for questions.
Thank you, Brandy. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing if anybody's here to speak on behalf or against.
Brandy, did we notice the adjoining landowners and hear anything back from anybody?
Yes, so the notices were sent out to the properties within 250 feet, and then there was a sign posted on the property as well, and I did not receive any calls. We had noticed this project before, and then we were looking into the sign ordinance to wait on the interpretation of what the yard card was considered. And at that time, we had a couple questions just from neighbors that were interested in what a yard card was. So, but other than that, no.
And the reason that it's not really germane to whether or not it's a business, but the subsequent use of a yard card is not a sign because it's not providing directions to a place or sending a message of
No commercial message.
Right.
So it's kind of the same as when you see like a Christmas decoration, like one of those blown up things or.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
So will they have a lot of traffic or anything with people picking up signs? What do they expect?
Actually, if the applicant wants to speak to that, if you come up here and then just state your name for the record.
Melissa Marr.
Are you expecting a lot of traffic, like on weekends or something like that, or will you be delivering and picking up?
I'm going to be delivering and picking up, so nobody will be coming to my address. So it'll be a 24-hour rental, and then I'll go and pick it up that night, the following night. So, yeah. Yeah.
Brandy, just again, it's more of a subsequent question that once these yard cards are placed, they still have to be out of the boulevard and out of the clear view triangles and those types of things, just like any other obstruction in a yard.
Yes, and so they'll be placed on the private property behind the sidewalk.
Yep.
And you know, if, say that one is not picked up and then it becomes a nuisance, things of that sort, we'll have the code enforcement situations where we could apply those.
And for the applicant, are you aware of the clear view triangle and how that works within the ordinance from a safety setback standpoint?
No.
Well, I'm sure somebody will tell you once you get out where you can and can't place the
Okay.
yard cards.
Sure.
Shouldn't be an issue if it's on the private property, except on corner lots.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Just 25 feet back from the sidewalk.
Oh, sure. Yep. Yep.
And I can give her a follow-up call tomorrow and give her any other important information.
That sounds good. I appreciate that, Brandy. Any additional questions for the applicant? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional comments or concerns from anybody in the public hearing?
Doesn't appear so.
There is none. I'll close the public hearing and look for action from the board.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. From
I have a
Bonnie.
motion for approval by Letsky,
Ford seconds.
and a second. Any additional questions or comments from the board? All right, so this is a conditional use. So with a board of 5, it looks like we need to have 4 yes to approve. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote.
All right. Douglas Johnson,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes. So 5 yes, 0 no. That conditional use is approved. Moving on to item 4B on the agenda, which is 3 separate variance requests. Is that how you're expecting to take this, Brandy?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and turn it over for you to run us through it then.
All right. Thank you, Blake. And let me just get to it here. So these variance requests are for Lake Area Technical College, and this is for their archway or skywalk expansion that will connect buildings on each side of Arrow Avenue. And I'll pull up the GIS to give you guys a vicinity of where this is. So there will be an addition onto, so here's Arrow Avenue, here's 11th Street. This is the current visitors center, and I might be messing up the official names of the buildings. But Shane is here where he can speak to that more clearly. But then this structure down here to the south of Arrow Avenue, there will be an addition to each, and then there will be a archway or skywalk expanding over Arrow Avenue. And I have another view that will give you guys a better idea of that. And these are the illustrations here. So existing building is here, and then existing building is back here, and so then these will be the additions, and then this will be the archway. So with this project, then there are 3 variance requests, and they include, this will obviously encroach within the front yard setback. This property is zoned R3 multifamily residential. Typically, that calls for a 30-foot front yard setback. What they're asking for will be the 11.5 from the property line south of Arrow Avenue. And let me get on a different map here to show that. So here from the property line, 11.5 feet, and you can see too, there are bump outs with that archway for the structure of it. So even though, you know, this side of the building is running parallel to the curb of Arrow Avenue, there will be this 4.5 foot bump out. So in just this location supporting the archway. And then, so you'll have 11.5 feet on the south side and then 5.4 feet on the north side. And so that would be for the front yard encroachment, the front yard setback encroachment. And then the second request is for the maximum overall height of 41 feet. This we put in here as, with it being zoned R3, that's for multifamily residential. This property obviously has the conditional use to have a school, which there are 2 height restrictions for the number of dwelling units you have. So being that this is a school, there's not dwelling units to apply. So when you have 1 to 8, it's a maximum height of 35 feet. And when you have 8 plus, then they can go up to 55 feet in height. So we just wanted to at least put this on here since it's not really covered, or it's just arbitrary really how it is in the ordinance because there's not the dwelling units. So they will be at a maximum height of 41 feet, which is at least within that threshold of 35 feet to 55 feet. And that is also, they had to make it higher, just that portion of the building, and I'll pull that picture up here too. So it will just be really the portions where the archway will structurally connect, because it has to meet a certain clearance from the sidewalk. So there has to be, I believe it's 15 feet from the sidewalk to the archway. And Jason Spurgeon, the building official, will review that with the building permit. But that's another reason why it had to be higher and why the height is at 41 feet. And then the third request is for the minimum off-street parking requirements to be waived. And if you see on the staff report, I did explain that, and then they also included an illustration where obviously with these additions and the existing parking lots, there will be some parking lost. So 46 on the north side of Arrow Avenue and 40 on the south. And then they're showing this 52 will be lost for the diesel expansion. But that's not included with this variance request. That's a separate project. But then they are showing that they will be including additional parking lots in the blue locations. The green is future where they could put parking, but all together with the they installed this northern parking lot up on 3rd. Let me just verify that. I get 3rd and 4th messed up all the time. 3rd, I'm pretty sure. Yep. So then this area, they installed a parking lot last year. And so then that adds 110 parking spaces. So altogether with this project, I have it in here of what there will be a net gain actually of 75 spaces. So, and that I put in here as well that as a condition of this variance, if the board would want to see a comprehensive parking study for the property. And with us just amending the off-street parking ordinance to make sure that we're complying, really for future projects. And just because of that change in the ordinance.
Brandy, quick question. So the amended off-street parking, does the off-street parking have to be on the parent parcel, or I can use satellite parcels to count? And then the next question is, how far can that satellite parcel be from the parent parcel?
Yes, it can be as long as it is, and so it can be,
I mean, if it's a half mile away or a mile away, do you count that? I mean, because if that was the case, for off-street parking in residential zones, I need to have 2 off-street parking, but I'm going to use the lot across the street, or 2 blocks away. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how you would apply that fairly and equitably to all applications.
yes, we did specifically include language on that with the updated ordinance amendment. So,
Because those 110 spots look like they're over 3 blocks away.
well, and, with.
That depends on what building you go to. Some of them are across the street from.
So, off-street parking shall be on the same site as or under common ownership with the structure it is intended to serve as referenced in 216301. And really with a campus environment, you do see that.
Would you just pull that back up, that plus 110? What's the closest building there? That's right there. Okay. I know what was getting me confused because north isn't up, right?
Let me fix that.
Yeah. The other thing too is within this complex now, and in particular, once this archway is completed, you could actually traverse that entire distance from within the building there.
Yeah. I really think it is probably imperative, though, as we talked about campus districts, we've talked about parking. It's great that Lake Erie Technical College is growing and we're putting more buildings out there, and we want to be supportive of that. But we do need to know that we are going to be hamstrung by parking as time goes on, unless it's going to end up costing Lake Erie Tech to purchase more properties, and they need to be doing that for their long-range planning as well. So I think if we are going to do due diligence on this, we probably need to be looking at, this is fine this time, but as we keep building, we're going to, on the main parent parcel, we're going to need to be looking at long-range parking.
Well, and from the calculation that I did, the rough calculation of the current square footage of the building, they would need about 973 spaces. And then I wasn't going to begin counting each individual parking space. So then that's where, going forward though, because they might not even have to ask for a variance, because they might, there is, when you look at this, they do have, especially with this 110 up there, there is quite a bit of parking in different locations around campus. So that, I think that would just be beneficial, because they might not even need to ask for a variance.
Right, but we all know that even though we have X amount of parking spots, we start approaching 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 students, which is our long-term goal, to be a larger and larger campus. Parking is going to be an issue, whether it's associated with the building or not. It's going to be based upon the student population and not necessarily the building footprint.
Well, and that
But I'd really like to understand too, additionally, not just the physical footprint of the building and what parking is there, but how does things like the multifamily dwelling, the apartment buildings in the area, and other developments have an impact on, the campus district from a parking requirement standpoint? Because that helps weigh in on our long-term planning around zoning, and in particular redevelopment of the campus district.
Good point.
Do you think the campus ever wants to put in like a parking garage? They're super expensive, but they can keep going up.
And that, so, 1 second, Shane, I'll have Blake, I don't know if you've opened the public hearing.
I have not, but if you're ready, Brandy, I can certainly do that now and open the public hearing.
Chair, point of clarification, that will be on all three variance items, one single hearing.
Yeah. One single hearing, and then we would expect action on each individual one.
Oh, just to answer the question, Ms. Zoletsky, we have, I'm sorry, I'm Shane Ortmeyer with Lake Area Tech. We have talked a lot about parking, in the district in Lake Area Tech have purchased peripheral properties, and we continue to do that. We're not actively seeking property. I want to make that clear, but when something does come up, obviously the district as well as Lake Area Tech is interested in those properties for that purpose. We've done a lot of master planning as well. That includes a lot of discussion about parking. I know one of those things that we had talked about for a long period of time is the city street department, because it's located, right next to our property as well. So, we are very cognizant of that. We're also cognizant about proximity. We plan on asking the school board at the April meeting to go to bid for a parking lot that will expand the southern portion, those southern lots. That will be the first piece, and then we would also like to develop the one that's on our daycare site at this point, or potentially the one that's across the street. So we want to get those done prior to the building going up, because we know we're gonna need that parking.
And someday turn it into more building, which
Well,
is a good problem.
The next buildings, we've done master planning, and aviation maintenance is another piece of that, which is out at the airport. The next piece would be near Custom Paint and Fab, which is where our auto area is. And that particular building, the way we see it now, which may not be the same as, in the future, has parking included with it too. So I think for right now, at least, I'm comfortable with how things have gone. In the future, obviously, we're always going to have to be cognizant of that.
You mentioned the plot with the daycare facility. What's the future of that facility then if we make that into parking lot?
Well, there are talks right now with the district that we could potentially move that daycare to the Garfield site, which is that isn't complete. Those discussions aren't complete, but that's an option at this point. If we don't do that, there's other options. Randy brought up the blue blocks. I would caution the area that you see in the green that says 30, we own that piece of property. We do not own the property that says 27. So I want to make sure that nobody is mistaken there. But you can see that the two on the south side will, get us 60 spots additional. And then we specifically designed the 110 car lot because we knew this was a potential, and we had the site. So the one thing about it, we talk a lot about, let's just take SDSU for instance. When you get out of your car, you gotta walk, So we're trying to make it as convenient as we can, but at some point our students are gonna probably have to walk further, although inside the building if possible.
Yeah, I think that's one of the benefits, looking at the way that Lake Area campus has been master planned, and the interconnectivity of those buildings is certainly a nice convenience for the students going there, that they can be out of the elements and walk from one end of the campus all the way to the other end.
Brandy, my other question had to deal primarily with the skywalk or the archway. So that structure is a private public structure situated over a public right-of-way. Is there any concerns or issues that you hate to say something, but what if the thing structurally failed, there was a tornado, somebody was to be underneath that in a car? Is there any issues that you talked about from staff? I mean, I'm just wondering what the liability is of having a structure that doesn't belong to the city over a city right-of-way.
And you want me to speak to that, Heath? There. So that is, we discussed that up front in meetings with Lake Area Technical College, and it is allowed in the IBC, and that was something that we had considered right away if we were going to have to look at vacating, but it is allowed. And as far as failure, And especially in a,
I guess the question would be if I own an apartment across, 2 apartments across the road and I wanted to do the very same thing, would a private citizen be able to do the same thing that Lake Erie Technical College is proposing to do?
I would think so.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Case, to your question, I would say that the rights of way are managed by the local jurisdiction, obviously, which ultimately rests on the city council to issue right-of-way encroachment agreements. They're all done on a circumstantial basis. Anytime they entertain a right-of-way encroachment agreement, they always look at all the circumstances surrounded by the application. I guess as long as structurally the design is adequate, it meets the codes, the building codes. We have the clearances we need for maintenance and operations of the roadway. Those things aren't impacted at all. We would make sure to check all those boxes administratively before even bringing a recommendation like that to the council. So I guess I would say that the potential is there, yes, but it would ultimately be the council's decision on whether they would award a right-of-way encroachment agreement for something like that. And then this board's level of action, of course, comes into play when looking at setback requirements for structures, as we talked briefly about before the meeting. And this board too would have some discretion on any circumstantial application before them to say yea or nay as well when it comes to that component.
And I guess from my perspective, as we're talking, I'm probably more inclined to grant a variance to the front yard. I mean, actually, it's a 0 front yard variance, right? Because I'm building right up to the property line within 5 feet. I mean, for all practical purposes. Because it's a public entity, a public structure, I mean, it's serving a public purpose. I think that's probably would be a reason to grant that variance, just as I'm trying to think out loud on how you justify that.
And I think the other point too, Todd, is that they maintain that entire corridor through there, so it's the campus district all the way through that street.
Yeah, I just think as we're looking at granting variances, we need to make sure we're not we're pigeonholing ourselves into a basis or a finding. So
Yeah.
that if we think that it's okay for this type of use under these circumstances, then we should probably notate that. So it might not be the appropriate thing for another part of town or what have you.
Yeah, and looking at it, in other examples too, in other communities where you've got, hospital districts or even shopping centers where they have these, these overpasses over public right-of-ways, you do see it in the right application. Circumstances are slightly different, but as long as the proposal meets all the necessary requirements and makes sense in the application, I think it's certainly something that has precedent, maybe just not in our community yet.
No, I'm not talking down on the application. I'm completely supportive of it, but I just want to make sure that we specify why we would be granting a variance in this situation.
And I think for practical purposes too, you wouldn't necessarily see it in a multifamily or a residential situation. It's probably going to be more of that high density commercial or campus type, because they're moving large amounts of people.
Yeah, it's a Minneapolis Skyway or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, we could potentially see this up in our hospital district as well in the future as that continues to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But just to be clear, this property is zoned R3 and we don't have a campus district yet.
Right.
But that would be a real simple fix to have that just as as we're developing the campus district, that we allow skyways, archways as a permitted use without having to worry about the variance encroachments as you're designing that section. I think I would just do that so we wouldn't have to be dealing with these types of things in the future as well from a variance perspective.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. And that is on the list of things
it's a long list. We know you have a lot to do. So.
No, but I mean, it is prioritized, like that we do want to try to get that campus district in place, because there are enough the situations where they don't fit the mold of an R3 district, for sure.
Hey, Brandy, I got a question. Can you pull up your overhead map there that lays out the building with the additions on there and the walkway? Yeah, you got it in yellow there. It looks like there's still plenty of space there for the corner and a clear view triangle, but I just wanted to clarify for sure that even though the building is closer there on the north and south boundaries, we still have plenty of open visibility coming up to that corner intersection.
Yes, and that would be, if that was something they were encroaching, that would be hard to even bring forward as a variance for the safety purpose. But you can see, just for perspective wise, we're showing that this is 17.8 feet. So if it's about the length of this is going to be hard to even give perspective, but this is probably 25 feet right here from the building, and so then you still have all that space. I can maybe.
Yeah, I was kind of comparing it. I guess the width of the street looked at 60 feet, and that's roughly the same size. It's a little hard to tell with the perspective on the drawing, but
Yeah.
And I don't want to throw a wrench in things, but we closed a street for a grade school. Why are we not looking at vacating a street for our college?
Yeah, I could speak to that too, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right.
yes, sir.
So we did have that discussion with the college here several months back when this design came to in its early concept phase, and we, as the street authority, the city engineer, the street superintendent, and I can't remember who else was in that discussion at the time, felt that this portion of roadway is important and critical enough to keep and remain some public jurisdiction because of the connectivity from Highway 81 all the way east to 19th Street. And we didn't want to lose that connectivity through there, and so we were more amicable to going this route and keeping it a public street, but allowing the archway encroachment into the right-of-way, but ensuring we had adequate clearances and such for the equipment.
Like fire equipment and stuff like that to get under it?
Yeah.
Good, I
yeah.
like that.
Yep, fire equipment, emergency response equipment, but also street maintenance equipment. I guess short answer is if the college were to take that section of street over and over time build into it or vacate it or impact it in a way that we lose that connectivity as a minor collector or a local through street, that was compromising our street network for the community, is why that decision was made.
I mean, I think we're just looking at, as Heath was saying, just the level and the amount of traffic in that specific area versus the amount of traffic that was being done at the Christian school site where we closed 2nd Street or whatever street was. We just have, gobs more traffic in this area.
Any additional questions from the board? Do we have anybody additional to speak in the public hearing while it's open?
Thanks, Shane.
My name is Rich Thomas, and I live at the corner of Arrow Avenue and 14th, which would be a block or two to the east. And I'm not against the project as such, but the parking concerns me because they've built additional parking, 110 spaces to the north, for example. In our neighborhood, you can't park as a resident owner, because Lake Area Tech students have all the parking spaces. Unless you put your vehicle out there the night before, and then you have to move it because we can only park on one side of the street. And so what I don't like is the fact that the students at Lake Area Tech aren't required to use their parking. So there are numerous spaces available on a daily basis on campus that have been paid for with public funds and are not being used?
Brandy or Heath, in your history, has the city looked at, restricting parking? You see it like you go down to Sioux Falls, Lincoln, you go out, a lot of different high schools that you're not allowed to park, only resident-only parking at, certain times of the day. Has the city council ever, talked about doing anything like that?
SDSU has something like that because I've had a ticket.
Because I had people working on my house that got tickets because they were parked in front of my house.
To your question, Commissioner Case, I'm not familiar if any time in the past if the city's entertained something like that. I can definitely do some research on that, though.
SDSU has their own people that handle that. They drive around and look for it and stuff. They have like a bubble type.
Yeah, if you go down to Sioux Falls Lincoln High School, there are certain streets you cannot park on. They usually, you have to park only on certain sides of the street, certain times of the day. Again, to help the neighborhood, I guess.
Which I would be in favor of that. I mean, I don't need to park there all the time. I mean, because I have a driveway, obviously. But there are times when you have people visiting, or, you have another car and you have it out there for a time. And the city patrols that pretty religiously in terms of giving tickets to people who aren't parked where they're supposed to be. But what's happening is, even with the addition of, 100 spaces or that kind of a thing, we've noticed that the students are parking even further to the east. They're now between 14th and 15th, where they used to just be between 13th and 14th. And they're going in all directions because they don't want to pay a parking fee to park on campus.
And maybe the solution would be if LATC would, that's so hard to patrol though with like driver's license number if they have a student registered to that.
Lots of times what ends up happening, like if you go to certain places, the college negotiates a parking on certain streets, and they have to, the student, whether they park on a public street or they park on the dedicated parking, they get a color, and that's where they get to park. And that way the neighborhood's happy and the school still has, the ability to use parking without at the same time putting in capital cost to build parking lots too. So there's ways around the negotiation. I don't think it's germane to what we're talking about here, sir. But I think it's probably a conversation that the city, the school, and the neighborhood needs to have.
Yeah, because I didn't know where else to bring it up.
No, it's good point.
Well,
Good
and
point.
I do think it's certainly a valid concern, and I do think this could be something that we talk about in relation to a campus district as well. It's something I've also seen in other communities in relation to medical facilities, right? Where within a certain radius of the medical facility, you can't park on the residential parking areas. So if we're talking about, a campus district, there may be a radius within, the 2-block radius of the campus district that we want to approach some of these kind of restrictions.
Right.
And it's a limited problem. I mean, it's like,
9 months out of the year.
7
usually.
o'clock
Yeah.
in the morning till about 5 in the afternoon. After that, the cars are gone because school's over with and they've left.
Yeah.
There's a lot of examples out there that work in other locations, so it's not like reinventing the wheel. It's just probably a matter of having the conversation with the interested parties to talk about maybe possible solutions.
And I would appreciate that conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Any additional comments in the public hearing while it's open? If there is none, I'll close the public hearing. So these are variants, because we have a short board here today, it will take 5 out of 5 in order to approve each of the variances. I believe we're going to take these each as individual actions.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion on the first variance to front yard setback encroachment. I would move to approve with the finding specific that this variance should be granted due to the public nature and long-range development plan of a campus district. So that way, we're specific into the reason for granting the front yard setback variance as requested.
Thank you,
I'll
Mr. Case.
second
I have a
that,
motion.
Oletsky.
Second by Oletsky. Any additional discussion on that before we take a vote?
No, I just want to echo what what is your name? Whoever you are. Yeah, we just do not, we don't want to see that happen everywhere, so.
And just to add on to what you said, Todd, about the campus district, I would like to make sure that we talk about this particular issue in terms of campus district and permitted use in the future.
Yes.
We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on this.
All right. Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
Kays.
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes. It's 5 yes, 0 no, so that variance passes. We'll move on to the second one, which is the overall height of 41 feet.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the second one on maximum overall height.
I'll second.
Motion by Oletsky, second by Dargis Johnson. Discussion on this item? So this one here again is something that we're likely to address in the campus district overall. This is certainly within the maximum that we support in the R3. And as Brandy, you mentioned earlier in the discussion, the current ordinance in the R3 district is driven off of the number of dwelling units, which in this case is irrelevant. So certainly another one that we want to address in the campus district.
Yep.
Okay, we'll proceed with the vote.
All right. Dolly.
Yes.
Ford.
Yes.
Oletsky.
Yes.
Kays.
Yes.
Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
5 yes, 0 no. That passes.
Mr. Chair, I'd
and the last-
like to make a motion to approve the minimum off-street parking requirements to be waived, subject to Lake Erie Technical College, the city, staff, and neighborhood looking at long-range development plan for parking, whether that be part of a campus district or just to have those discussions moving forward as we are starting to encourage public structures being built with a campus, knowing that they may be taking away parking spots that are there right now. So we do need to have that going forward, but I think at this point in time it would be okay to waive that requirement.
Thank you, Mr. Case. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dargis Johnson. Additional discussion on this item?
Ford has a question.
Yes, Ms. Ford.
Todd, was your special mention there about discussions on the parking part of your motion?
The motion is to approve with some sort of subsequent parking plan. I'm giving the Lake Erie Technical College and the city carte blanche on how they approach that. But I think they do need to have some sort of plan for, before they come back again and ask us to waive any parking requirements in the future, they need to have some sort of plan on how that's going to be compensated somewhere else.
All right. I totally agree. I totally agree with that idea. And I think it's highly necessary for the people in that neighborhood, as this gentleman just pointed out. But that seems so open-ended to me. I mean, who's going to do this? And is it required before they put up this archway? I guess I'm uncertain. It seems very vague.
I'll refine my motion if it's so inclined with the second to accept the request to waive the parking requirements subject to a plan being developed prior to coming and asking for and in the event they have to request a waiver in the future, we will not address it without a parking plan. How about that?
Okay, I get that. So you're saying we're good with this one, but don't come back unless you have a plan if you should come back again.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Do I need to second that? Okay, I'll second.
So a motion by Mr. Kays and a second by Dargis Johnson. We'll go ahead and take a roll call vote on this.
All right, Dargis Johnson,
Yes.
Kays,
Yes.
Aletsky,
Yes.
Ford,
Yes.
Dolly.
Yes. 5 yes, 0 no. So that passes with that stipulation. Next item on the agenda is the open public comments.
Don't
Anybody here to speak on an item that was not on the agenda?
Nope,
We'll move on to new business.
none that I have.
Any from the board? We'll move on to old business.
None that I have.
Any old business from the board? All right, then we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a motion by Aletsky
Or Dargis Johnson.
Second by
Johnson.
Ford.
and a second by Ford.
Correct?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We'll adjourn the Board of Adjustment and we'll reconvene here momentarily as the Plan Commission.